fairly quickly. There's been a lot of discussion this morning and over the last several weeks of the things that have been done to get the economy going and all of that. And I won't repeat the accomplishments. I think that's all been well described. But let's go straight away to what the challenges are of sustaining the good governance reforms. Let's begin with discussion of the broad strokes. Knowing what the accomplishments have been, I think most investors are worried about how sustainable this is going to be and what challenges remain for the administration and for the economy over the next 3 years. So let's get a broad strokes view of this from Secretary Butch Abad. Butch, I want to ask you if you can talk to us in broad strokes about what you feel are the greatest challenges moving forward for the next 3 years in terms of cementing the gains in governance and perhaps moving forward on some things that perhaps we have not necessarily paid enough attention to.
Well, insofar as the Department of Budget and Management and how we see the bureaucracy, as you correctly pointed out, we've been able to deal with many issues involving leakages and lack of priorities. So I think what we need to be able to do in the coming years is develop more capacity for execution. And that means really looking at every agency so that both the manpower competence is there, as well as the usual bottlenecks in policy and regulation are put in check. At the same time, I think it's really important for us to develop the capacity insofar as we are able to relate all the way to the local governments and communities. For example, one of the key challenges we face for the second half is generating inclusive growth, especially employment of the poorest sectors who have lower skill sets. This really means being able to identify, those key industries and products and be able to support the infrastructure requirements as well as determine and deal with the policy and regulatory bottlenecks and be able to bring together government, private sector, local government units, and the sectors we want to benefit in a regular meeting so that we can push the businesses or the industries that need to generate growth. So this is the area where we can do a lot more.
I think you correctly cited something that I've heard a lot from investors, which is from the top there seems to be a very clear direction and there seems to be very concrete action being taken to introduce these good governance reforms. But sometimes, and you'll hear this from other people, sometimes it's not always filtering down on the ground. I'm not just talking about on the local government level, where there sometimes is a difference between what the national government says and what the local government does. But even when you go down to the bureaucracy, I'm sure Rufy Biazon and Kim Henares in your own agencies, there's been policy direction from the top, but there seems to be some need or some demand to make sure that that translates more concretely even on the ground. Despite the fact that there certainly have been accomplishments, there's still that demand from our stakeholders. Kim?
Actually, what we're trying to do in the Bureau of Internal Revenue is basically try to process re-engineer all the procedure, trying to automate it, lessen the face-to-face interaction with taxpayer. The whole objective is we should be able to track the data, obtain the data, and analyze the data, and from there trigger some actions. No? Like the objective in the future is choice of who will be audited and to whom it will be assigned will be chosen by a computer system. So there will be no, how do you call it, captured corruption, because that's also one of the complaint. Then the other thing is also we're trying to interconnect and use data from other government agency. The whole objective is we would like to be able to track somebody from birth to death. We would like to track goods from the day it get imported or get created up to the day when it gets sold. So that is the whole objective of what we're trying to do today, and overlay it with the computer system so that
far along are we there, Kim?
Actually, we're building the computer. We have already started last year with all this process reengineering. And this January, basically with the assistance of the Millennium Challenge Corporation, the Compact Grant, where they have actually bitted out the computerization, which will bring the computerization program of the BIR to a web-based computer system, and which will integrate all our other system into one single database. So hopefully by July of this year, we will be able to pilot the first phase to the four national capital region and the large taxpayer service, and then roll it out all the way to middle of 2014. Then we will go into a second phase in July 2013 and roll it out again up to 2014.
Rufi, could you perhaps talk to us also about what's happening in customs?
Yes, the Bureau of Customs is probably what we can describe as the black sheep of the family with the multiple personality disorder. Black sheep because, as we all know, when you talk about customs, you automatically think about corruption. Multiple personality disorder because we have actually three mandates: revenue collection, border security, and trade facilitation. And sometimes those three mandates have a way of rubbing against each other. But our direction in the Bureau of Customs is to do away, to break and block what is known as the kalakaran, or the way things are done in the Bureau. This has been going on for generations, for decades, principally because there is an opportunity afforded by the legal environment of the way things are done in the Bureau. What we want to do is plug those loopholes, remove those opportunities of connivance and interaction between corrupt BOC employees and officials and a corrupting business environment. So the way to do that would be to drive the Bureau with technology. There are many processes in customs clearance which may be automated right now. It's being done in other countries, and we would like to implement the same processes, procedures, and systems in the Bureau of Customs of the Philippines. Likewise, we also need to update our policies. Um, the Tariff and Customs Code, which is the basic law that we are implementing, was first passed in 1957, and it has been amended just a few times. But as we know, global trading practices and procedures and basically the environment has already changed from 1957 to now, 2013. And many of our processes are already outdated, but we are stuck with those processes because of the existing law. There is now a pending customs modernization and tariff bill in Congress. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem that it's gonna be passed by the 15th Congress, and we are hoping that by the 16th Congress, this would be given enough attention for us to move on with modernization. Because modernization is not just on our equipment, on our personnel, but it's also modernization on the policies that we implement.
Rufi, how involved was Customs, BIR, and DOF in the crafting of this bill? Is this a bill that we can get behind, or is this a bill that perhaps we need to provide more inputs for?
The bill was crafted by legislators who used to serve in the Bureau of Customs. The basic text and the basic formula we contained in the bill is pretty good. But I believe that there are still some improvements that we could do based on the experiences now and the current global trends and practices. The Philippines acceded to the revised Kyoto Convention back in 2010. The Senate ratified that agreement, but unfortunately, our law, the Tariff and Customs Code, is not yet compliant to the RKC. That's why there is an urgent need for us to pass that bill.
Tesser Bosa, as SEC chair, you have some responsibility for when we talk about improving the investment climate. No? I mean, just from the point of view of your agency, what has been done and what to you are the biggest challenges moving forward?
Thank you, Secretary. But better governance insofar as a regulatory agency and not primarily a revenue-raising agency like the SEC means to me um, quality and substantive regulation. It doesn't mean that the more regulations you have, the better. In fact, any regulation that comes out from SEC should be fully compliant or focused on the mandate of the SEC, which is to provide the sound legal and regulatory framework for all business enterprises as well as the capital markets. So the past year, we have come out with substantive guidelines for the use of retirement funds. We have issued guidelines for the assessment of the performance of audit committees of publicly listed companies. And we have also done away with certain requirements for registration in order to ease doing business in the Philippines, as well as provided guidelines for the security deposits that branches of foreign companies have to make here in the Philippines. Now, the outcome that we expect from such sound regulations would be primarily we'll have more compliant companies, especially among financing companies, lending companies, membership clubs, foundations, which are more or less those that are subject to stricter monitoring from SEC. Also, we'd like to strive for a fair and honest capital market. That is not an oxymoron. I'm in fact quoting my counterpart from the US SEC. She did mention fair and honest stock exchange. Of course, we'd probably be able to achieve that through vigorous prosecution of securities law violators, as well as imposition of stiffer fines and penalties. But I think more than that, we should be able to adopt changes in the culture or behavior of market participants. And we can do that probably by a means of rewarding the good guys or those who play by the rules. I think that would be a more positive approach to things. Now, with respect to institutionalizing these better governance reforms, I think so far as SEC is concerned, maybe even other government agencies, it's more like what Mr. Sandes or Dr. Sandes said earlier. We should be able to hire and recruit better managers, and there must be what I think should be more effective capacity building measures, and what I mean primarily would be from top to bottom, maybe from even the chairperson down to the lowliest examiner of an application. And the specialists that we need in the SEC would be those in the areas of finance, accounting, and the law. So just last year, we also adopted a certification course for our own CPAs. They underwent this certification program for the PFRS specialists or financial reporting specialists. And I'm happy to report that I think it's our agency which has come up with the first set of financial specialists in government. And together also with the other work being undertaken by the Bureau of Customs, the Bureau of Internal Revenue, we are also into a computerization project. We hope to finish within this year our online registration, our surveillance project, as well as the database enhancement. Because as you know, we have the largest corporate database in the country. We do furnish the BIR a lot of information, at least with respect to corporate entities. So we would like to be fully computerized together with the other agencies for better connectivity.
Are you looking at any legislation to help you do your functions better?
Yes, it was 1 year in the making. We have already the proposed amendments to the Corporation Code. Probably we'll be touching on things like what should be the term for corporate existence, because we do have a lot of companies which celebrate their 50th anniversary in such grand manner, but forget that their term has expired. We also have companies, you know, we have 800,000 registered companies, but only 500,000 are active. 300,000 are either been revoked, dissolved, canceled, and inactive. So we'd like to fix that, maybe a perpetual license with just renewal every so often. And we also want to make definite our foreign ownership rules arising from the latest Supreme Court decision for this year. And we're proposing some minor amendments to the Securities Regulation Code, primarily in order to increase the penalties for insider trading and also maybe to provide for disgorgement of profits.
How difficult is enforcement as a part of your job? I mean, there's monitoring, there's regulation, but there's also enforcement. And I would imagine that that's probably the most challenging aspect of what you do.
Yes, it is very challenging. In fact, because of my experience as a litigator, I've focused on stepping up our enforcement actions. But the problem is in the gathering of evidence, you have to keep track of all the trades, and it's not only for a one-day period. You'd probably be tracking from 6 months to 1 year. And in fact, early this morning, I was listening to the news from Bloomberg, and they were talking about this insider trading or price manipulation case involving the Porsche family in Germany. And I took note of the fact that the supposed or alleged price manipulation happened in 2009, but they're just winding up and zeroing in now on the family or the, I don't know, relatives of the founder. So I guess if it takes about 2 to 3 years in the US and in Europe, I'm not saying that we will take longer, but I think we will try to even do it faster. And with all the cooperation, of course, that we will get from the exchange, which now has its own integrity corporation, the CMIC, which coordinates with our investor protection surveillance department.
Well, we were talking about law enforcement, and I think this is a good time to bring Justice Secretary Laila De Lima into the discussion. Laila, you're very much aware that when think tanks analyze the situation in the Philippines and they study it. I'll give you a concrete example. The Heritage Foundation did this index, and we scored pretty high on a lot of the governance indicators. But the one thing that stood out in the last report published last year was the judicial system. Now, I know we're in the executive here, and there are other parties that need to be involved. But from the point of view of the Department of Justice, what can be done moving forward to give people, investors in particular, comfort that the judicial process or the prosecution process is going to be more transparent and clear and fair and consistent?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Ricky, for not asking questions on the Atimonan incident or in the Amalillo issue and other burning issues for the past few days. It's giving me indigestion already talking about those things. Now, before I respond directly to your question, let me state that, well, I think many of us realize that justice issues and justice concerns are an overarching area of concern, and it cuts across a lot of sectors. And that's why anything that we're doing or have been done or is being done in the justice sector or within the justice system would impact on the health of our economy. Now, I'd like to articulate on the issue at hand on a more positive note. On the part of the department, or for the Department of Justice and our attached agencies, good governance is definitely a primary mandate, and our thrust at or our efforts at good governance rest on 2 pillars. Number one is our responsiveness to our mandate and the task, which we undertake with utmost transparency and high sense of accountability. And number 2 is the continuing improvement to the people's access to justice. And our goal always is to earn trust, the people's trust, the business sector's trust, and the international community's trust. Now, there are a lot of challenges in the justice sector: corruption, slow pace of cases, and that includes preliminary investigation in the department. Now again, the answer to that is really improving the processes and a continuing collaboration and coordination among justice sector agencies. And we have this mechanism called the JSCC, the Justice Sector Coordinating Council, wherein there is dialogue, regular dialogue being conducted between and among the Supreme Court, the DOJ, the DILG. And on the matter of improving the processes, we have been codifying rules, rules of procedure, and I'm very pleased also to announce that we are crafting the new criminal code. And in fact, book one of the new criminal code, because as you know, our revised penal code now has been almost 100 years old already. And we are doing away with archaic provisions of law or provisions of penal laws and coming up with a modern criminal code, because cyber crimes have not been contemplated or envisioned or anticipated in the revised penal code. Now, I guess the real value of good governance is this: just doing the right thing means higher returns. Now, the challenges are still there with respect to the justice system, including the prosecutorial service. And DOJ has been designated, as many of you know, as the country's competition authority. We are firming up the processes in that regard, and as a matter of fact, we are coming up with the guidelines and the handling of complaints on antitrust cases, and it will be effective March 1 of this year.
Let me just sort of anticipate what might be going through the minds of some people listening. DOJ is going to be dealing, moving forward, in antitrust issues from a prosecution and legal point of view. And it's clear that DOJ, when you talk about DOJ, the first thing that comes to mind is not those technical, financial, white-collar issues, but it tends to be more going after, as you said, atimonan crimes, violent crimes. How equipped is DOJ to deal with something that's a little bit more esoteric, like antitrust issues and other things that might be more of a concern to investors?
Yeah, in all candor, that's what we lack: capacity. Although we're addressing it for the past few months already, yes, because our mandate is focused or is focused on common crimes, and therefore these are fairly new areas of expertise insofar as our prosecutors are concerned. But in discharging our mandate as the competition authority or as our Office for Competition, we're not really gearing towards, or we're not really focusing on the possible prosecution of violations of antitrust laws, although it's part of the mandate. Now, we are looking at regulatory as well as analysis and research of issues and problems within that area. But of course, there is always the option of prosecuting violators of antitrust laws, and then even other financial crimes, money laundering cases, violations of securities and securities regulations laws. Now, only a few prosecutors at the moment are equipped to handle that, although there is continuous capacity building. We've been coordinating with our partners in that regard.
And who would those partners be? AMLA, SEC,
Yes,
BSP?
SEC, AMLAC, DOF, and then you have other private partners and international or foreign partners like USAID.
Okay, I'm gonna start. We've got some time left, but I anticipate that there might be some questions. I'm gonna start opening up the floor to questions from our audience, but let me just throw one more thing out, and this is primarily for Butch, but for anybody, even those of us who are sitting there from the cabinet. The big thing about the concern, I think, of investors now is, when we were in Davos, somebody said to me, when 2010 came in, nobody was really looking at the Philippines. It wasn't on anybody's radar. And now at the end of 2012, people were like, around the world were like, hey, this came from almost out of nowhere without us really paying attention to it. All of a sudden, there's so much attention on the Philippines. And we're midway into President Aquino's term. And what you hear more and more often is, how do you sustain the momentum? How do you sustain the reforms that are being put in place now? Butch, Kim, and everybody here has said that there are certain things that they're doing to institutionalize some of these reforms. But maybe you can expound on that a little more. What comfort can we give investors that what's being undertaken now will continue to be undertaken and perhaps even gain more momentum in the next 3 years and beyond President Aquino's term?
Well, I think the first thing that we really have to do is embed all of these reform measures in the policies, institutions, and processes of the key agencies of government that are pushing these basic reforms. I think that's very important. The second is really to give people a stake in all these reforms. I think especially for the less privileged and the marginalized groups in this country. So we really need to deliver immediate, direct, and substantial benefits to our people, especially the poor. When we were in Sultan Kudarat, Maguindanao the other day, Ricky, we saw there how the MILF has valued and is valuing this partnership that it has found in this government. And Chairman Murad himself said that we trust this government and we feel that this is the opportunity not just for Muslim Mindanao but for Mindanao itself to proceed on a path of peace and prosperity, and we may never have this opportunity again under a leadership that we can trust. So they're saying we've got to get things done so that our 11,000 combatants and the more than 300,000 households that are their constituencies can feel that signing this framework agreement is really to their best interest. And finally, I think we do need to develop a broad constituency or demand for reform so that, if you put all of these three together, it should be politically and economically costly to reverse these reforms.
So meaning if we're doing this right, then it would be against anyone's short-term or even political interest to undo these things. So it's not because we're depending on the goodness or the kindness of people's hearts, but because of their practical needs rather than to sustain all of this. Kim, did you want to say something? And I'm going to open it up to questions after this.
I think that question was also asked of me when we're helping World Bank craft their country strategy plan. My answer there is that's why there's a sense of urgency among all government officials to do all this reform. Because if you create the momentum, it will become unstoppable. If people are used to getting a good quality service, they will always demand it. Whoever will be the next person coming to my position, let's say. So it's like if somebody is already used to riding a car, he will always demand to ride a car. He will no longer be happy walking or riding in a kalesa. That's why all of us is working against time, trying to deliver as much of the reform as we can at the shortest possible time so that our countrymen will require that kind of a standard and nobody can reverse that.
Laila, did you want to say something?
If I may add to that. On the part of the justice sector, one way of sustaining the momentum, even beyond 2016, is to professionalize the justice sector bureaucracy and shield the justice sector workers from any and all kinds of partisan influence or consideration. Meritocracy in the hiring of people,
getting rid right away of the bad eggs, firmer or very firm rules of disciplining people and holding the justice sector workers accountable. Justice sector workers would include judges, prosecutors, law enforcers, policemen, investigators, BI personnel, etc. So fair rules and the merit system should always be in place when it comes to personnel movement. Thank you.
Thank you, Laila. I'm going to open the floor up to a few questions. We've got a little bit of time, and I'm pretty confident we can get a few questions in before we break for lunch. Don't limit yourself to the people here. Cesar Purisima, Secretary of Finance, is dying to answer your questions as well. So just come up to the mic, introduce yourself, and ask away.
I'm Lisa. I was actually struck by that statement to how to institutionalize reforms. I was actually a victim of these reforms. Just last year, our company has been here many years ago, more than 50 years or more, probably more. And they invested here. It's a Swiss multinational company. They invested here $500 million. They never had any dividend declaration. Now, we know for a fact that we have this undue accumulation of earnings. We were required to declare dividends under that SEC rule. So we had to, and it was approved. Now, we had to apply for a tax treaty application because of the final withholding tax. Now, in that requirement, we need to show proof of remittance. Now, when the investments flew into the Philippines, there was no requirement for a registration of certificate of inward remittance. Now, little did we know that in the past, there was a policy issued by the central bank for all the multinational companies to register their CIR. And the deadline was December 15 last year. And we were supposed to remit dividends December 16. It was a dilemma. We couldn't remit, we couldn't repatriate the necessary dividends because we could not buy Forex. So when we went to BIR, we could not also show proof of any remittance because of that constraint. I know for a fact that these are all reforms that should benefit the foreign investors, but it turned out to be a contrary. Now, our head office is actually eager to receive the first time dividend declaration after so many years. But you see, they called me, they told me it's no longer fun to be in the Philippines.
That sounds like SEC, BIR, BSP. Yes, it is. Who wants to take that? Kim.
First, you only come to the Bureau of Internal Revenue if you want to take advantage of a double taxation treaty benefit. If you don't want to, if you're not asking for that, you don't have to come to the Bureau of Internal Revenue. So you are covered by the regular tax rate. The second thing about inward, you said the company is 50 years old already. From my study of law, the relaxation of the Forex only happened less than 20 or 30 years ago. So when you had invested 50 years ago, there's a requirement, a long-standing requirement of the central bank that you should register that investment. Because before, you cannot go to the banking system and buy the dollar if that investment is not registered. But I believe that it was relaxed in the late 90s or early 2000, wherein you can buy actually foreign, if you don't want to buy from the banking system,
You can buy from any other source. You don't need to show that registration. No? So I do not really understand what the problem is, because there are really ways for you to remit that money, provided you pay the regular tax rate and provided you're willing to buy it outside the banking system.
Yeah, our company is actually a publicly listed company in Switzerland, and they want to take advantage of the tax treaty. And second, they don't want us to go to the parallel market, afraid of the AMLA thing. So even if we tell them that it's actually legal for us to source foreign exchange from the parallel market, they are fixated because they don't want their name to be tarnished later on, because we never know. There are a lot of banks who are hit by that. They don't know where their sources are coming from.
I don't think that is a subject of an AMLA violation, no? Because there's a real reason for remitting the money outward. No? The AMLA provision is only to make sure that these are not dirty funds, no? Transfer of dirty funds. So if your company buys it from a parallel market, that's not even an AMLA violation, no? Because there's a reason, a legitimate reason for buying that dollar and moving that funds from the Philippines to another country. No? I think your company is just being too overly cautious, and I believe the government cannot really address those kind of concerns. It's a company policy, it's not a government or country policy.
I'll tell you what, Kim, this is a very specific case, and I think it would be better if we could arrange that after this somebody talk to the company and see what options are available within the law and within the current regulation. But if there are other questions from our panel, yes, ma'am.
Dina De Jesus Pasagi from the Congressional Policy and Budget Research Department. So the harmonization of the financial sector taxation has long been identified as one of the critical issues in leveling the playing field among financial intermediaries. Definitely it requires a legislation and a comprehensive one, but what we've seen so far is somewhat of piecemeal approach, particularly pertaining to the insurance premiums tax and the documentary stamp tax. Again, in the Philippine Development Plan for 2011-2016, it has been identified as a strategic move to mobilize savings. So my question is, what is the plan for the 16th Congress with regards to harmonization of financial sector tax?
Who wants to take that on? Nagtuturoan kayo,
Well, I guess the concern, if we are going to harmonize financial sector tax, no, it is basically the word said harmonization. So in the pool, it should cover all the financial product, no, including the stock market, including the equities, the debt securities, no, and including insurance product and everything that's related into it. I think that's a very major undertaking because the taxation is very diverge between the two, between all these products. No? There are products that are exempted, there are products that's subject to only 1/4 of 1%, there's product that's subject to 20%. No? I think it's a major thinking that we really have to undertake. As far as the Bureau of Internal Revenue is concerned, we would be happy to have a single way of taxing all of this, no? So that we don't have to ask questions. Is this being traded in the stock market? Is it being traded publicly? Is it a private transfer? Is it something that the bank earned? Is it something that an individual earned? No? It would simplify our life. But I don't think it is that simple to craft a single law to cover all the product. It is the same difficulty in having a flat tax rate, no? Because now you will discuss what is the rate that's correct, no? When you are dealing with people with different profit margin. So I don't know whether we will go into that battle when we're looking at the fiscal incentive rationalization bill first, which is already a major battle. I don't know whether we're ready for the other battle at this time.
Okay, we're actually about to close the session, but I see somebody there. I'll take one more question and then we're going to close this session. Sir?
Yes, thank you very much. My name is Neil Enrile Narca of Philippine News Agency. As I understand, Secretary Ricky, there would be a press con after this?
Yes.
Okay, but I have actually 3 questions. Number one is that the election period has just kicked in, and we know for a fact that despite the government's pronouncement about surplus in funds, there are still agencies in the government that needs immediate augmentation of their budget. I'm referring to, for example, the Food and Drug Administration. The law was signed in 2009, and yet the IRR has just been recently implemented, particularly just this January in their reorganization. My question now, Secretary Abad, would you, of course, I know that FDA gets its fund from the DOH, and until now, in their IRR, there are centers that they would like to develop throughout the land, and that would take millions of pesos. And my question now, Secretary, about would you do you have plans to augment their budget, since I know that despite their internal capacity to generate funds, there's still lack of it? No?
Thank you for the question, sir. Butch, maybe
Well,
a quick
frankly,
answer?
I don't know the situation of the FDA, because this is a new reorganized agency. But I know for a fact that it does generate substantial income from the regulatory fees that they charge. But if it is necessary to improve the efficacy of FDA as a regulatory agency, and that their own internally generated funds would not suffice to allow them to perform that function more effectively, we certainly are willing to sit down with them and look at their requirements.
Thank you, Butch. Thank you, sir, for the question.
Yeah, I still have one.
I'm afraid we've run out of time, but
okay.
there will be a press conference. You
Okay.
might be able to ask
Yeah,
those
thank you
during
so
the
much.
press conference. I don't know about you guys, but I'm getting hungry, and it is about noon, almost exactly noon. So I'd like to thank our panelists, Chairman Herbosa, Commissioners Henares and Biazon, and Secretaries De Lima and Abad. And with that, I turn it back over to Claro Fernandez.
Thank you, Secretary Ricky, and Secretaries and Commissioners. Let me now call on Finance Secretary.